Monsieur Anber.
Monsieur Casavant, how are you, brother? How are you? How are you?
The king of quarantine is back. And for those who don't know, this is a special edition this week of a calling Russ Anber. We did one like to enjoy with the trainer of Artur Beterbiev, Mark Ramsey, who was, of course, also in Russia and also quarantining. So you can check that out if you'd like. If not, we're back here for another edition on YouTube and other outlets. And we're going to be expanding to other audio platforms. And some people asking, are you going to be on Spotify, iTunes, all in due time? Rome wasn't built in a day, but we're getting there. And Mr. Anber, how are you enjoying your, what is this, your eighth quarantine period since the pandemic began a year ago?
It is my fifth. It's my fifth quarantine since the end of August of last year. So August to September to October to November to December, and then the 3 months of March. So in 7 months, I have had now, this is number 5 quarantine. Not bad, huh?
At one point, though, I have to say, though, when you get back from a unified light heavyweight champion in Russia, it's kind of worth it. Didn't you enjoy Russia? Didn't you tell me it was one of your favorite spots that you traveled to?
I love going to Moscow. Now, I say that because obviously, you know, I'm not going there on my own and stuck in a hotel room. I go there. I have friends there who picked me up at the airport, who took me to eat in places where, you know, were wide open, but we went to places that didn't have anybody in them. So I tried still to stay safe. But as far as they're concerned, there doesn't seem to be any COVID over there. You know, like it's life as normal as what it used to be when we were traveling for boxing. So having somebody who's from Moscow, who takes me around, go to the billiard club. The people even at the billiard club were so nice enough. I think I told you this last week, that they gave me the VIP room, you know, just so that I wouldn't be in contact with the mass of people that were there. But
yep.
On the other side of the VIP room the place was full. The joint was jumping. Life was as usual, you know, like was normal. So it felt great to be back in that kind of an environment. And then even at the fight, having actual, you know, fans in the place, and there's yelling and screaming, and, you know, they're cheering for Arthur, and you could hear the buzz, you could feel the electricity, so different from when going to a place that has no fans. So I love Moscow. I love going there, but obviously that's because there's people there who take care of me, and we're friends, and they show me around and make the trip that much better, because getting around Moscow is not an easy thing if you don't have somebody who knows what they're doing. You know, like it's not easy. It's a massive place, massive.
Well, we saw the pool hall last week in the show that we recorded. A lot of people said very nice background, the private room in the pool hall. That was very good. And we know if you do have an issue, though, in Russia, you have your buddy Roy Jones on speed dial, who's very close to so you have your connections in Russia. And before we get to the result of the fight for Artur Beterbiev and what may be next and your impressions, we got to get some house cleaning in order first. And Russ, we have a sponsor on the show, of course.
Well, same one, right?
You want to same one. It's bet99.com. It's Canada's newest online sports book and casino. And the reason why we're talking about this here is we want to make sure you check out the player props, the bet builder, the risk-free live bet bonuses. Use the code BOXING99. You get a sports welcome offer. You know what that is, Russ? You know what the sports welcome offer is?
No idea. Tell me.
All right. You get a deposit match of 100% up to $600. So
last week, you told me that last time. Yeah, good.
Yeah, exactly. So if you boxing code 99, sports welcome offer, deposit match of 100% up to $600. Last week, if you bet on Artur Beterbiev to win by knockout, which was kind of a short bet, but if you bet the over the amount of rounds it lasted, that would have been a nice performance. And this weekend, we have Povetkin and Dillian White in the heavyweight division. So make sure to check out bet99.com. Use the code BOXING99 if you can, and if you feel so inclined to do so.
You know what's beautiful about this is that, you know, there used to be a time when you bet the winner or the loser of the fight, right? That was it. You bet the winner or loser. But now you've got the over and under. You know, you expect Artur Beterbiev to win, but now if you get your guy out early and to make a prediction that he was going to stop Deines in 10, I don't think a lot of people would have bet that. I think a lot of people were expecting an early knockout, and a lot of people would have bet on an early knockout. So just goes to show you never know.
It came close to being that way when he knocked Deines down at the end of the first round. Now, going into, we talked about it, and you said last week on the show that Deines was a tough, rugged guy who would resemble maybe the Callum Johnson fight for Arthur. And in some cases, it ended up being that he lasted a bit longer. He fought well. He never was trying to just survive. He did try to fight Arthur, which, of course, ended up being a bad decision for him in the long run. But when he was knocked down in the first round, did you say to yourself, oh, this is going to be a short night? Or were you kind of thinking, you know what, maybe this is going to be a longer fight because now he tasted the power and he's going to be more cautious going into the next rounds?
Do you want the truth, or do you want the easily manufactured answer that everyone would believe if I said it?
I think people enjoy listening to us because there's some truth in the statement. So let's go with the official.
So the truth is the knockdown came right at the end of the round, and I was getting all my stuff ready. And the way, of course, despite having asked the Russian promoters to put the stairs on on Arthur's left-hand side, of course, they put it on the right-hand side. So I had to use the chair that I'm sitting on in the corner during the rounds. I had to use that as my step up to get on the ring. So I'm setting that up and getting my bucket ready. Next thing I know, Deines is on the ground and I didn't see the punch. So I couldn't really pass judgment on what kind of a shot it was. I think he caught him on the top of the head, if I'm not mistaken, and knocked him down. So I can't say that I said, oh boy, this is going to be an easy one. No. And in reference, when I said to the Callum Johnson fight, Callum went for it more. You know, Callum tried. Callum went toe to toe. It was almost kamikaze what he did, but he went for it a little bit more. Deines was a little bit more reserved. He boxed. He tried to use the southpaw advantage. He backed up. He stayed away. He waited for an opportunity to counterpunch Beterbiev. But I think, look, even speaking, I didn't expect him to last as long as he did. And I thought the fight was going to be over. I think it was around the fourth round. Beterbiev hits him with a left hook that spun his head around like a scene from The Exorcist, right? Like the head went right around, and the guy never moved. I said, oh, here we go. I put the Vaseline on my hand. I said, okay, another round. I thought we were going to get out of there early, and that's when I realized, you know what? I think we've got a night ahead of us. This guy's tough, and he was.
Was there any talk in the corner, because Arthur hadn't fought since Vosdik in October of 2019, to, all right, take it easy, do some rounds? This thought of going into by fans that fighters have a preconceived notion whether they want to do rounds or not. Is that true? Is that something that can happen, or did this happen after a few rounds of Mark in his corner, the head trainer Mark Ramsey telling Arthur to slow down?
No, you're right. There have been cases, and the fight that when Beterbiev won his first world title against Koling, I believe was the
Enrico Koling, yeah.
Yeah. We were in the corner wondering, why doesn't he look as intense and as destructive as he normally does? And then suddenly in the 12th round, well, he comes out there, guns blazing, and the howitzers are coming now. Boom, boom, and you can hear them. And when we asked him after, said, well, why didn't you do that sooner? He said, I wanted to see if I could do 12 rounds. And he did it. But that was not the case for this one. This one was more a case of, you know, it's been a while. We don't know much about Deines. We know that he's a tough guy, southpaw. Be careful. And like Mark kept saying, be careful. Fais attention. You know, be careful of the looping left hand that Deines wanted to throw, and the straight left hand he wanted to throw. So it wasn't a case of let's do rounds. We weren't trying to do rounds. It was more a case of let's set the pace, let's break the guy down and take it to him. And I thought that was starting at the fourth round. Then Arthur started to pick up a few rounds, and, you know, okay, we're ready to get him out of there. And the kid showed some courage in coming back, you know, like I think everybody underestimated the courage and heart and determination of a fighter. And sometimes you can't just look at the record. I mean, most of the time you look, you say, yeah, okay, this guy, yes, Beterbiev won probably every round in the fight. I'm not saying he didn't. But this guy, you know, presented a toughness and a determination, which you have to give him credit for. But at the end of the day, Matt, I think the best way I put this was, you know, it was a Ferrari against an Audi. You know, Audi's a pretty good car, but not when it's up against a Ferrari.
No, and I think it's a very fair point. The one thing that people saw this fight, and now there's two trains of thought. There's the train of thought that Artur is so destructive that even if it takes a bit more time, his sheer will, his sheer power, his discipline, his cardio makes him an almost unbeatable force. But others looked at it and say, you know what? He's vulnerable at times to getting hit. His defense, sometimes he's not as, tight as he could be or should be. What do you think? Do you think it helps him maybe get a bigger, more substantial fight, whether it's against Dimitri Bivol, whether it's against the winner of Joe Smith against Maxim Vlasov, or whether it's possibly the big fight against Canelo down the road? Do you think people now think, you know what, maybe there's a little bit of chink in the armor? Because I remember when Artur was going into the ranks and he knocked out Tavares Cloud within 5 professional fights, people are like, oh, we're not touching Artur Beterbiev. There's no point in fighting this guy. But now, do you think maybe some people look at it and say, you know what, he's vulnerable? Or do you think it's mostly, you know what, it doesn't matter, he got hit a little bit because he's going to get you down?
I don't want to say who, but, people from the boxing industry have told me that, they feel that, he's vulnerable now, that somebody like Joe Smith could be a big problem for him, that Joe Smith is a big puncher, and that he could be dangerous. And I didn't need for Beterbiev to fight Adam Deines and have maybe not the explosive performance that everybody wanted for you to tell me that Joe Smith could be a dangerous opponent. You know what I mean? Like, Joe Smith is a dangerous opponent. So, and Joe Smith can punch. So, Joe Smith is a world-class fighter. So I think that this little bit of vulnerability that Artur might have shown in the Deines fight, I think just does more to enhance his fan base and, gives other people hope. And they say, okay, let's go, because there's always going to be that judgment of Beterbiev. If he doesn't blast you out early, you're always going to find fault with it. Like he knocks you out late. Well, why did he do that earlier? Why did he wait so long? How come he didn't get him out early? Why did he get hit with that shot? Listen, he's a fighter, right? And he's fighting other world-class fighters. You expect there to be a resistance from guys wanting to defend their title, the same way that Vodzik, did everything he could to retain his title, and eventually, Beterbiev takes it out of you. The same way that Usyk takes it out of his guys, the same way Loma takes it out of his guys. I mean, they put a pressure on you, make you fight at a level you don't want to compete at. So that's okay. If they think he's vulnerable, that's good. Hopefully, he'll get more matchups. He doesn't have a long time left, for another 20 fights, right? That's not going to happen. So at least I don't think so. But and everybody he fights is dangerous and big and strong, and they punch hard. And, it takes work to do that. And it puts miles on your body when you have to train, especially the way this guy trains. I mean, this guy's a beast, like, when he trains. He does, his warm-up is some people's training. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy what this guy puts his body through. So it's going to be interesting in the light heavyweight division. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, and it's interesting to what you mentioned for the discipline. People might not know this, some will. Artur Beterbiev is very close to GSP, who's one of the best fighters all time in the history of the UFC and mixed martial arts. And one thing they have in common is their discipline and their training. Artur would train even if he wasn't, in training camp for a fight for boxing. He's consistently always training, always trying to find new ways to be disciplined inside the gym, training methods. Because having been fortunate to have seen Artur up close in training, having a chance to talk to him in the past, been involved even in pre-fight meals with Artur at one point, he's somebody who takes the sport extremely seriously, but is not necessarily in love with the sport of boxing. He's in love with the discipline, the training, and the fact that it can get him and his family money, of course, and he can get paid to do so. I think it's just something that people maybe don't understand, just how much of a factor when you have fighters, Russ, who only start showing up for training camps, and that's when they go into hard training, compared to somebody who stays disciplined year long. It's probably one of the reasons why the Klitschko's dominated the heavyweight division for such a long time, is that they were consistently in the gym while other heavyweight contenders would only appear when they had an 8-week training camp. Do you agree with this?
For the hockey fans out there, Brett Hull used to say, I don't like hockey. I just happen to be good at it. And, I think that's a case not only with Beterbiev, but lots of fighters, find themselves not being fans anymore of the sport. They were fans when they started and they liked it and they looked. And then eventually it became arduous and hard, and you had to train. And they focused on the discipline more than the fan aspect of it. And I think Artur falls into that mold. Matt, if you're going to start going down this lane of what fighters do nowadays as opposed to what was done in the past, again, we're just going to sound like the two old guys on Sesame Street, up in the tower, criticizing.
No, the Muppets, not Sesame Street.
Muppets, yeah, the same thing.
Yeah.
And just up there, like, it's so different. I mean, it used to be a case where you fought, you took a week, maybe, depending if it was a big fight, you took 2 weeks off from the gym and you were back in the gym. There was never a thing where, oh, no, man, what do you mean 5 weeks? That's all you're giving me notice is 5 weeks? Oh, I'm not ready. What do you mean you're not ready? Why aren't you in the gym? And now it's like fighters go to camp to get in shape, and you're not supposed to be going to camp to get in shape, so it's all changed now, they don't do it. And Artur is one of those throwback guys. Artur is one of those guys, Matt, that I always like. I think of this as an ultimate compliment. I don't know if people can even realize what this meant, but there are some guys whose fights deserve to be broadcast in black and white. And Artur is one of those guys. He's one of those throwback guys who fights like the old timers, and he trains, he's hard, he works, he comes to punch, he comes to fight. That's what he is. And he's one of those guys that his fights should be broadcast in black and white, and the ringside announcers should wear fedoras and, be calling the fight. And we should have guys sitting ringside chomping on cigars.
Speaking of cigars, they have the picture of Bert Sugar, the late Bert Sugar, of course, who was one of ringside with a cigar and the fedora. And Marvin Hagler is one of the pictures. The late Marvin Hagler had to bring back that little piece of souvenir I had. Right. While we talk about Artur, his next fight, the Canelo fight down the road could be extremely enticing, but more realistically, it's likely to be the winner of Joe Smith against Vlasov. Now, if Smith ends up winning that fight, he's favorite to do so. You had Joe Smith as an opponent being in the corner of Eleider Alvarez. And Joe Smith ended up winning that fight by knockout. And you've always told me that Joe Smith is not only tough compared to like an Adam Deines was tough, but he's rugged with a style that's extremely difficult to be in with. But how does Beterbiev versus Joe Smith, if that fight happens, not end up being an absolute war when you consider the power these two men have?
Impossible that it's not. And not only that, he's big. Like, he's one of those guys that's big. And it's funny, we're talking about black and white. Joe Smith is one of those guys. Joe Smith is a blue-collar, hard-nosed, tough-as-nails fighter. All the acronyms you want to give. He is one of those guys. He's a throwback, tough guy. He makes whatever he's lacking in an amateur experience, whatever he's lacking in natural athleticism, if you will, he more than makes up with grit, determination, hard work. He trains hard. He's ready all the time, and he has a job. You know what I mean? So this guy is hungry. This guy, you want to quote Marvin Hagler, it's hard to stay hungry when you're sleeping in silk pajamas. This guy's not sleeping in silk pajamas. You know what I mean? He trains, he goes to work, then goes to the gym, then fights. Like, this guy is a throwback guy. Can you imagine what kind of great production you could make doing a black and white broadcast of Joe Smith against Artur Beterbiev? Because that's the guys that deserve it. They are throwback guys. And however long that fight lasts, it's going to be action all the way. And the guys are going down swinging.
From ringside perspective, Alvarez doesn't have the same power that Beterbiev, although he was able in the last few fights of his career to knock guys out, even sometimes with like one punch, but not necessarily every punch was tough for Alvarez. I mean, the power that he generates compared to Beterbiev, but having seen Joe Smith take Alvarez's punches ringside, being in the corner, do you think Joe Smith has, what would you rank his defense or chin level, do you think, in the light heavyweight division?
His record proves it. I don't have to say it. His record proves what his chin is like. He's not a guy getting stopped. So, and I've seen Joe Smith on a few occasions. I saw him when he fought Bernard Hopkins. I was ringside for that fight because I was there with Usyk when they fought. So when he fought when him and Hopkins fought. So, I saw just how tough and how strong this kid is. So, they're not. I mean, listen, this guy is for real. But if I have to give an analogy of the power, and Joe Smith has power. He really does have what we call in the business heavy hands. When he hits you, even if it's not a good clean shot, you feel it. Like there's some power in that shot. And Scully told me the best story when they were in training camp with Beterbiev, and they had a sparring partner who had been in, and Scully's taking care of the sparring partners. I don't remember the guy's name, but I mean, this guy had been with everybody. He had been in sparring camps with heavyweights, in training camp with heavyweights, sparred with heavyweights, all kinds of named guys that he had worked with. And he comes here and he's expecting this to be another day on the job, like he's done so many rounds with so many guys. And when the first round ends, he goes back to the corner, he puts his arms up on the ropes and he faces Scully and he says, well, that was different. And it is different, it is different. So it's Beterbiev has that kind of debilitating power. But I think if I had to pick out something that Beterbiev does exceptionally well that probably goes unperceived by the naked eye is, again, I make reference to what Loma can do, what Usyk can do. There's a certain pressure that they put on you that even when they're not throwing punches, they're draining your energy. Like something is draining you by what they're putting on you. So there's no rest. Like they don't just stand and wait and you say, okay, nothing's happening. They might not be doing anything, but if you relax 1 second, they will do something. So there's a special skill there.
This is a great point. And we saw a little bit of it also in the fight last weekend between Virgil Ortiz and Maurice Hooker, where when you have guys that can hurt you almost at any punch, there's kind of like that nervous energy, that tension in the air, that one thing can end with one punch. And you've said with Arthur, even if it's not a punch, he's going to make you expend energy trying to just be careful of what's coming next. And sometimes it's a glancing blow, and that's how much strength he has. It hurts fighters.
100%.
Now, we're a shorter podcast tonight. We're actually, even over past time of what we had planned for this evening. So let me get to one topic, though, before we go, that's been emerging on the internet, because now as the lightweight picture is kind of developing and the other fighters, whether it's Teofimo Lopez against his mandatory Kambosos, you're going to have Ryan Garcia fight someone else. Then Tank Davis. Tank Davis now has probably some legal issues he has to deal with. You have Devin Haney going to be fighting, if I recall correctly here, it's Jorge Linares. And then Javier Fortuna could be a possibility for Ryan Garcia. That leaves Vasiliy Lomachenko, the former pound-for-pound king, without an opponent. And he's kind of been vocal on different Eastern European channels. And I think it's a bit unfair for some of the treatment he's been getting. And I want you to address one of the comments and one of the arguments people have been saying is that Loma kind of doesn't deserve to be in a position to have whether the rematch against Lopez or another big fight at lightweight right now against the big names, because he wasted the first 6 rounds of the fight against Lopez, and that he should not be crying about the result. He's been criticizing Lomachenko based on his performance against Lopez.
To say something like that, to me, I feel, and I know who said it, it was on Twitter, to say something like that, it's almost a hateful tweet. Like if there's no constructiveness to it, there's no necessity for it. It's just a hateful tweet, because you cannot dismiss the guy who was the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, ends up in a close fight with Teofimo Lopez, ends up losing, and suddenly dismiss him as irrelevant and shouldn't have a rematch based on that because he didn't throw any punches in the first 6 rounds. Well, for somebody who didn't throw any punches for the first 6 rounds, he sure made it a hell of an interesting fight going into round 12. And if you look at the real people who scored the fight, forget the phony cards at ringside, but the real boxing experts who scored it, whether it's Jones, whether it's Andre Ward, whether it's Crawford, everybody had it as a close fight. Everybody had it as a close fight. So I think saying something like that is just dismissive. That, that's what rematches are for. If you go ahead, if you think it's going to be so easy, then let's just do it again. Why are you dismissing a guy who, a week prior to that fight, you were ready to kiss his ass? and say how great he was. And now all that he did, all that he accomplished is not enough to get him a rematch. I find it hateful, and I don't believe it would have been a treatment afforded an American fighter had the same thing happened. I think if Loma's American, I don't think he gets that kind of treatment to just dismiss him and say you're irrelevant. As for an opponent, the talk is the gentleman who beat Verdejo, Nakatani, is looking like a front runner.
That's right.
For this summer. So and that's a tough fight too. That's
Coppinger, who was with us a few weeks ago on the podcast.
Oh, did he confirm it?
No, he didn't confirm it, but Mike a few weeks ago was saying that based on what he's hearing, it's almost a formality that they'll be facing off against each other this summer.
Gotcha. So that's
it'll be interesting to see Loma back in the ring no matter what.
Yeah, you got to see him back in the ring. He has to come back, and he has, unfortunately, he has no other avenue than to earn the rematch. If he can, is to earn the rematch and get his hands on a title again. That's what he has to do. So there is a selection of fighters out there that he can do that with. Haney, Lopez, both good fighters, great fighters. So yeah, it'd be interesting. But I just think that it's sad that the media all of a sudden wants to dismiss the guy, and when they do things like that, it just shows what lack of respect you have for the fighter. And that hurts me that they do that. It's not right, and it's not deserved at all. Regardless of whether you agree with what Loma's perception of the fight is. It doesn't matter if you agree with it or not. As a champion, he earned that right. As a champion, as a fighter, he earned that rematch. It doesn't have to be because you think he should have it or not. You're sat behind the safety of your keyboard. This guy has earned the right to the rematch.
Well, if he doesn't get the rematch because Lopez plans on moving to 140 afterwards, or if the rematch doesn't happen, I think it would be unfortunate. But I do think Lomachenko remains a big-time factor as long as he wants to continue fighting at 135. And there's other great fights to be made for him out there. And we'll wait and see, depending on the Nakatani fight this summer, and if he prevails, what's going to be happening in the fall.
Matt, if Lopez moves up and doesn't make it, okay, no problem. You did the job you were supposed to do. You beat the number one guy. Tip of the hat to you because you fought a great fight. You're moving on. I get that. But as a media person, or people saying that you shouldn't have it, you don't deserve it because you didn't throw punches for the first 6 rounds. That's just hateful to me. Now, you're not doing this for any constructiveness. You're not doing it for the betterment of boxing. It's just hateful. This guy has to be in the mix whenever you're talking about anybody in the lightweight division, junior lightweight division. If you're not mentioning Loma, you're hating for no reason.
All right, there we go. It's the didn't you have a soapbox segment at the end of the Indus Corner back in the day on TSN?
I did indeed. It was my favorite part of it as well.
Yeah, well, there we go. We had a little bit of the soapbox edition of Calling Russ Anber. It was a shorter one this week. Once again, for those who want to tune into Mark Ramsey, we had a lot of fun talking not only about the Artur Beterbiev fight, but the history of his coaching experience, whether it's fights with Jean Pascal, what's next for possibly Oscar Rivas and the Bridgeweight division. We'll save that on the English side for a bit later on, but please always tune in, subscribe if you can on YouTube. We'll be on different platforms shortly. And Mr. Anber, any final thoughts this evening as we'll be reconvening from your quarantine basement next week?
I'm looking forward to the rematch between Povetkin and White. I think it's going to be an exciting fight. I think that if you talk about rematches, a guy gets starched with a single shot, he gets a rematch. And you have other people saying Loma doesn't deserve one. It doesn't make sense, right? It's illogical. But, I think that's an exciting fight, and it's going to be interesting to see how it turns out because it really is a pick 'em fight. You flip a coin on this one as to who you think wins. But like I said when we talked earlier with Mark Ramsey, I think Wilder and Povetkin might be the only two guys right now in the division that carry that one punch knockout debilitating power. I mean, just off the top of my head, that's what I'm thinking. But Wilder ends it with one shot, and Povetkin, as we saw in the previous matchup with Dillian White, ended it with one shot as well. So it's going to be an exciting fight. I'm looking forward to it. And it looks like Gibraltar is just absolutely beautiful, like what they've got set up over there. So it's good.
Yeah, it will be interesting. Kind of like an island setup for this boxing event this Saturday night. The rematch between Povetkin and Dillian White in the heavyweight division is more relevant than it's been in quite a while. And we're hoping that the Fury-Joshua news gets finalized, even though it looks like they're both going to fight each other. There's still no date. There's no venue. Remains to be seen, but it's exciting times in division, exciting times in boxing. And so us will be reconvening next week. Thank you again for tuning in, and good evening, Mr. Anber.
Have a good one, Matt. Thank you, buddy.